Hello everybody, Carol Garrison with Carol's Creative Escape. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm a independent demonstrator having a bad hair night apparently with Stampin' Up. Been with them 10 years now and have enjoyed spreading joy one card at a time for my 10 years with Stampin' Up, but also many years before that. I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, like I said, and if you have any questions about our products or the things that I'm sharing with you tonight, please be sure to drop me a line and let me know. Again, I would like to thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I know everybody is busy and it can be hard sometimes. Just taking a look to make sure I'm live on my Facebook page, and there I am. I know it can be hard sometimes to carve out time, so even if you have to watch it on replay, that's fine. Just let me know that that's what you're doing, and we will go ahead from there. You can learn either way. I hope everybody had a great week. We've actually had a very warm week here in Minnesota, and which has been a good thing because we had some ice buildup. We don't typically get ice storms like other parts of the country experience, but we did have just a little coating of freezing rain, which left a coating of ice on everything. It was getting very difficult to get rid of, and we ended up developing an ice dam, which was causing some leakage in our garage. But between our temps yesterday and today, which were 36, 38 degrees, something like that, we were able to at least get that part of the problem resolved and chisel off the ice that was on our driveway and front patio, so it's no longer dangerous to walk outside at my house. We had a great weekend. I had a niece that got married, had a beautiful ceremony, and we were able to see family and friends again, which is nice to be able to do that, especially when it's for such a happy occasion. So again, I hope everybody had a great week, and what I'd like to do is just get started now on this card. It's kind of I guess I'm calling it a layered fun fold double layer card. I don't really have a name for it, but that's kind of what fits it. So let me go ahead. I'm going to flip my camera around and get set up for that. Just a moment, please. I'll do that real quick. You can see some of my stamping supplies over there in the corner. And then I'm going to get things set up here on my desk. Get rid of my fancy camera stand, and I think if I can get a little more light here, we should be good to go. Hey, I'm even pretty well centered on this one. That's always amazing when that happens. So the card that I'm showing you tonight, this is my first sample, and I call it a double layer card just because we've got two sets of layers. This is just a quick thank you card, and I kept it very with the exception of a little bit of the light coming out of our lighthouse, it's all navy, night of navy, and basic white is the theme. So much thanks. Without you, I would be lost. So that's one of the two cards. And then my second card, I confess that I ran over it with my chair right before I went live here. But this is made with the Regency Park that I've been showing you in that gorgeous cane 3D embossing folder, and some of the Regency Park Designer Series paper. And I've got on this one, I'm featuring Poppy Parade and Petal Pink for my colors. And I just used the blends pens to color my pearls so that they are also Poppy Parade. And for the leaves, I used Granny Apple Green. So disregard this part that's smushed, keep it covered up with my thumb. That's where I ran over this card with my chair. And then I've just made this Best Wishes for Your Anniversary on the inside of the card. So an easy card to make. The measurements are even. You don't have to deal with a lot of the 1/8 of an inch type thing. And I'm going to just go ahead and get you started, and I'll share those measurements. So be sure you've got some paper to mark them down. And this is another one where I would recommend that you make a template that you can use just out of old cardstock. You don't even have to like the color. If you've got some designer paper here where maybe you haven't liked that. Hi April, hi Denise, thanks so much for watching tonight. April, I got my purple going here for you. You know, just so that you have a template, you can write down the measurements right on that template and not have any issues with that. So the first piece of cardstock that you need is one that measures 5 and 5 and, I want to make sure I get this right. I lied because there is a 1/8 measurement in here. No, I didn't lie to you. I'm right. Okay. It is 5 3/4 on the width and 5 1/2 on the height. So 5 1/2 by 5 3/4, and I've got a score line at 1 1/2 inches. Okay, I'm going to repeat that because I think, a little confused with my numbers, and I don't want anybody being confused. 5 3/4 by 5 1/2 inches, scored at 1 1/2 inches. And then I've got another piece of Gorgeous Grape. You can use the same color, just as I've done here, or you can switch up your colors. So I've got Poppy Parade, and then I did Petal Pink, and then I'm back to Poppy Parade. Whatever you want to do is perfectly fine with me. So the next piece is another piece of Gorgeous Grape, and this measures 4 by 5 1/4, typical of the size that you would put inside a card. And then I have a piece of basic white cardstock that measures 3 3/4 by 5. So everything's just going down by 1/4 of an inch for those two pieces. And then I have another layer of Gorgeous Grape, which is going to measure 4 3/4 by 3 1/2 inches, followed up by a piece that measures 4 1/2 by 3 1/4. Now on this card, you will notice I've added just a piece of Designer Series paper. The measurement for that is 1 1/4 by 5 1/4. Totally optional. On this card, I actually stepped it up a little further, so I have a layer of Petal Pink that measures the 1 1/4 by 5 1/4, and then I put a piece of DSP, Designer Series paper, and that measures 1 inch by 5 inches. So I've just built up a second layer on that chunk as well. On this card, I am not going to put any Designer Series paper. I'm just going to leave it as it is, so you can kind of see what all three look like, but those pieces are all optional. So to get started, let's just go ahead and fold on our score line, and then I'm just going to take my bone folder and burnish the edges real well. And you can see on here I've got my Stampin' Up logo, so that if I decide to sell this card in the future, I'm able to do that and meet the policies of Stampin' Up and their angel policy for when you're selling cards. Now, I will let you know that this particular Stampin' Up piece is from a retired set called Better Than Email, and sometimes I just have to pull that snail out because it's so cute. But in the current catalog, we also have this set called Limited Edition, and that's got all sorts of the copyright things, including just a plain old copyright Stampin' Up on it. But I felt like using the snail, so that's where that one is coming from. I am going to start by stamping our images onto the basic white paper. Now, the other thing that I'm going to change up on this card is my other two go portrait style. I am actually going to make this card be horizontal because I wanted to show you just the different options. So as I'm stamping my pieces on here, I need to make sure I have them all going the right direction. Otherwise, I'm going to be in trouble. And so on the inside of the card, I want it to say with deepest sympathy. This is going to end up being a sympathy card. I've needed a few of those. Tape stuck on my fingernail. I've already needed a few of these this year, and as much as you don't want to use them, it's good to have them on hand. So I'm just using my Gorgeous Grape ink pad, and then I'm using sentiments that come out of the Peaceful Moments stamp set. This one is in the annual catalog, and I use this one a lot. I think if you don't have a lot of sentiments, this is a really good one. It's got a thank you, it's got a sympathy, it's got a birthday, it's got a congratulations, and then there's good sentiments that you can put inside as well. So, like I said, if you don't already have a good collection of sentiments, this Peaceful Moments It's a cling stamp set. Great fonts, great sentiments. Highly recommend it. Like I said, I use it a lot. And I'm just going to put this kind of in the center and stamp it down. And then I'm going to set that aside so that I'm sure that ink is dry. And then I am going to grab my StazOn. You know what? Nope, I need to use, excuse me, my Memento ink, because I'm going to be using a blend pen and a blender pen, and that is going to be alcohol based. So I need to make sure I'm using the ink that's kind of the opposite of that, so that I'm not causing smearing problems. Now I'm actually going to be stamping this image off the edge because I want it to fill the whole card. So I'm going to be stamping it twice. So I'm just grabbing a piece of scratch paper that will allow me to do that without getting my work surface messy. And I'm going to stamp slightly off on the bottom too, because I really want this right at the base of my card. And I'm just going to press down to make sure I get my ink everywhere. And then I'll re-ink this. And again, I'm using the Memento ink because that will work with the alcohol in the blender pen that I'm going to use. And then I'm just going to add this to the other side here. And there we go. So now I've got my poppies going all the way across my card, and you can't even tell that this was two separate stamps. It's kind of lucky that that's how it turned out, but I'm not going to complain. All right, we're going to set that aside. And then the other thing I'm going to do is on the front of this card, I'm going to put thinking of you with all my heart. And again, that I'm going to be doing in the Gorgeous Grape as well. So I'm just going to stamp that hopefully right in the center. I'm kind of getting lucky tonight with where my stamps are ending up. And then I'm going to leave my ink pad open. Before I started this, you may have seen me also pinching it a little bit in the front. Part of that is to get ink into the lid. And that's where I'm getting that. And I'm going to take this blender pen. These have been around forever. I've been using these since I started stamping. And basically, it's a great way to add color. Maybe you don't have a blend pen in that color. Maybe you don't have, you know, a color pencil or whatever. This is just a great way. I apologize if my camera's jiggling. I'm plugging my phone in so I don't run out of power here while I'm doing my live. Anyhow, it's just a great way to add color if you don't happen to have a marker or color pencil or a blend pen in that color. And so the big rule of thumb is you always need to make sure that there's no other ink color on here before you use it. And so that's just scribble a little bit on your paper. And then as you work with the ink, the more you pull it out, the lighter it's going to get. I want this to be fairly intense. And so you can see I've got some just on the tip of my pen here. And I am now just going to go in and start coloring my poppies here. And they're going to get lighter or darker depending on where I'm at with my ink thing. So I'm going to try to complete as many as I can before I refill my ink onto my blend pen, because I don't want it all to be dark. And again, I'm using this with the Memento ink because one is an alcohol-based and then the other is a water-based ink. And that way, when the two interact, they don't cause either of them to start running or smearing. Hopefully that makes sense. And it's funny, I've made this card before, and I always seem to try, when I do it, to be more monotone in my color choices rather than adding a lot of color through my images or through even using designer series paper and stuff. I don't know why. I guess next time I make it, I may have to push myself just a little bit. And so I'm just going through and coloring in all of the flowers. Unlike the blend pens, this is not going to soak through your paper quite as much. You might see a little bit of dark, but it's not as liquidy, I guess, as the blend pens can be. This is a great tool too if you've got colored pencils. You can use that to drag out the color in colored pencils as well. And it works, like I said, great for just lifting ink off the cover of a lid. I've also used it with like a painter's tray, you know, the things with the little paint wells in it, and added a bit of the re-inkers and then dip my pen in that. I kind of like doing the tap it into the tray technique because it tends not to saturate the pen tip quite as much. But you can always get it clean, and I'll be showing you how to do that once I get all of these poppies colored here. And you can see too that as the color dries, it does lighten up. So it's not as dark. Like, keep an eye on this one. It won't be as dark as it initially looks going on. So don't panic if you use this technique and then you think, oh, that's so dark. It does lighten up as it dries. So that's pretty cool. All right, almost done here. Yeah, so yesterday John and I spent a lot of time with the ice scraper and shovel trying to scrape our driveway off. It had really been a like an ice skating rink. It was kind of funny because, I mean, I was lucky, so I understand that when I tell you this story here, but our trash gets picked up on Thursdays normally, but because of the ice that came through on Wednesday, everything got, garbage trucks were actually pulled off the road, and so our pickup wasn't until Friday. And my driveway has a curve to it, and it does slope downward at the bottom. And I went to grab my recycling bin and my trash bin and was very carefully walking back up and got about 3 steps, and I hit that slope and I knew I was going to go down. And sure enough, just as a car went by, I ended up flat on my seat. I didn't get hurt. You know, it was a very slow fall. Actually, probably a fairly graceful fall for me, but I was more embarrassed by the fact that a car went by just as I went down. Somebody actually saw me do it. And that always the first thing we ask is, oh, I hope nobody saw me. And like I said, I can laugh now because I didn't get hurt. It wasn't a big deal. But you do need to be careful on that ice because it is so easy to get hurt. All right. And then I am going to use just a little bit of olive green to highlight the stems a little bit. And so I want to use the same one. So I'm just going to kind of wipe it on the corner of my paper again until it comes off clear. The tip will still be darkened, but the ink itself is off of there. So now I can grab that, pop the lid open. You can tell I've used this lid a lot for that. Now the tips on both, there's tips on both ends, and they are the same size. So you don't get the fine tip like we do on the blends or our markers. But if you use just the tip, it's pretty easy to get the fine lines. And when I'm highlighting stems like this, I'm not as concerned that I stay right on the line. I'm okay if they're a little thicker, because obviously the tip of my pen is bigger than what these stems are anyhow, so it would be almost impossible, I think, to get anything like that. So again, the blend is just blender pen is just a fun way to add color, especially for detailed items. And it's something I've always had in my stamping supplies. So if you don't have one yet, go ahead and get one ordered on your next order so that you can try playing a new way of coloring. And like I said, it works really well with the watercolor pencils too. You can either use water on those or the blend pen. And it does dry really quick. So that's another handy thing to have here. Almost done. Have you guys had a chance to look at the new mini catalog or the celebration one? There's some really cute stamp supplies in there. And again, if you like that mini cutter, they do have it as a part of a joining special. And it comes in a signature color of boho blue, which will be one of the new in colors when the catalog comes out. And that is only going to be available for a limited time as part of the joining offer. In fact, after today, I can't even get it as a demonstrator again. I have a white one, so I didn't choose to get another one. But even demonstrators are not going to be able to get that. Now, I want to add a little bit of sparkle as well. So I'm getting my good friend Stella out here. My sister calls this Stella Winka. Which I think is a good name. It's really called Winka Stella. This again is one of my standby go-to items. And if you don't have one of these pens, I highly, highly recommend them. It's one of my favorite products. And the reason I like it is I like having a little sparkle on my cards. It can make a big difference in how something looks. But I find glitter to be a very messy item. And I would prefer not to have glitter on everything that I touch for the next 10 years when I do use it. And so this gives me the opportunity to use glitter without making a big mess with it. And I've got what I think is a little bit of adhesive on here. Somehow I picked up a darker spot, but we're just going to let it go. All right, so that is the front of my card. So you can see that the blend pen can give you lots of different tones of the color that you're using. You know, it goes from light to a fairly intense color here. And that Wink of Stella added just a little bit of sparkle. That's the hardest part of the card, was that right there. And that wasn't hard, it was just time consuming. And I am actually just doing tone on tone. So purple on purple, Gorgeous Grape on Gorgeous Grape. And to assemble this card, like I said, this is the easy part, is we're just going to add adhesive to the back of our paper, layer up our cardstock like so. Sometimes it's nice to have that volume without the extra color there. And then we're going to add our inside piece. And again, when you're using the seal, not a lot of pressure, and do that kind of check mark, and it does help keep the tape from gumming up most of the time. And then I'm just going to center this piece again onto here. So now we've got our first base inside layer. And then for this piece, again, I'm just going to add my adhesive. And I'm going to add that to another layer of Gorgeous Grape. And then, you know what, one thing I am going to do, and I was debating if I was going to do that or not, but I think, no, I'm not. I was thinking I might add ribbon to this, but I'm not going to. Now, when you put this top layer on, one of the things that you need to be aware of is that you want it, before you adhere it and stick it down, you want to make sure you know about where to place it so that you get that border of white around this layer. But then also, when you put adhesive on, you only want to put maybe at most 2 strips at the top, because it's going to be on this panel, and if you put it any lower, you're actually going to put glue onto your card as well. So I'm just going to run my seal. I did actually do 2 strips just because I wanted to make sure that it was going to stay as a flap. And then I start by lining it up, keeping my fingers underneath the adhesive and getting it lined up on that layer, and then putting it down on the top. And I almost had it centered, and it's not going to come off, so it's perfect the way it is. And then I'll just come through and kind of burnish it with my fingers from the back side. And that would be our card, with the exception of adding a few embellishments. And I'm going to use my take your pick tool and some of the iridescent pearls, and add those to the front of this card too, just so there's a little bit of something. And I'm going to kind of cover up those dark spots that I saw and didn't like with some of these pearls. So there you go. And that is the card for tonight. Again, super easy. You can dress it up, or, you know, change it up a little bit by adding designer series paper on this little strip. You can also dress it up by adding a second layer of cardstock underneath designer paper, or on this piece adding the texture. And this one, I did use one of my blending brushes and petal pink ink, and just brushed it over here. Again, I'm covering up where I ran over the piece on my chair. Not very happy that I did that, especially right before I went live and couldn't fix it. And then I've got this piece where I didn't do anything to this strip, but I rotated this card instead. And, you know, just showing you a couple different ways that you can make it. So none of them, this part was a little time consuming to do all that coloring, but it's kind of fun and relaxing to do that. And then you've got these two, a little bit of cutting of paper, but not a lot of effort needs to go into making these cards. They're still pretty simple to assemble. If you have any questions, need measurements, whatever, let me know. Again, if you're looking for one of the new mini catalogs or the celebration catalog and you don't have a demonstrator, drop me a line and I get one in the mail for you. And if you have any questions, or more importantly, you make this card, please be sure to add a picture of it in the comment section. I love to see what other people create. And if you know of anybody that you think might like this layout, please be sure to share the video with them too. I appreciate any likes and sharing that I can get. It helps me grow my business, and that's kind of a fun thing to see too, that other people can help with that. So I appreciate that, and we will see everybody next week. Have a great week. Bye-bye.